Olympic values were respected and observed, wouldn't you?
Our goal is to inspire and enable people to adopt an active, healthy, and fulfilling lifestyle.
Team sports allow us to talk about life skills.
The Olympic Games in sport sees itself as a promoter of human rights.
Hello and welcome to all our viewers again. We're all set to get underway with the latest and greatest session that we have for you on our One Play Sports Network. So the speaker for this session is Dr. Jim Parry, who will be speaking about the concept of sports in Olympism. Dr. Parry, of course, will give you a better sense of what we will be discussing as part of this topic. But I'll just give a quick introduction of Dr. Parry, after which I shall hand over the reins to him. So Dr. Jim Parry is a visiting professor in the Faculty of Physical Education and Sports at Charles University in Prague in the Czech Republic. Dr. Parry, it's a pleasure and an honor to have you on our One Play Sports Networks. You can certainly enlighten the viewers on what you have in mind with regard to your presentation.
Okay, shall I kick off now?
You can kick off now, Dr. Parry.
Jolly good. Let's get started because, hello everybody. I'm afraid this is going to be very quick, and I hope you can stay with me because this session is one that normally takes about 3 hours with a break in the middle, 2 1.5 hour workshop sessions, and I'm going to do it in 40 minutes. So hold on to your hats. We're going to talk about what Olympism is and where it came from. And I'm going to take a different view from the view that you might have found with other presenters. My view is very simple, and I'll announce it now, and I'll try to make it come good throughout the 40 minutes. Olympism is not about teaching values. Many people think that Olympic education is a kind of values education. My view is, yes, of course it involves values, but it's not values education. Olympic education is education through sport. Sport, sport, sport. And anybody who tells you that Olympic education is to do with teaching values in classrooms or teaching values in workshops is somebody who's taking children away from sport and putting them in the classroom. So for me, Olympism is education through sport, and that's why we need to know what sport means. That's why this talk is entitled The Concept of Sport in Olympism, because the philosophy of Olympism is based on the concept of sport. Okay, so that's what I'm going to be saying, and I'm going to try and make it come true now. Okay, I begin with I'm getting feedback on my microphone. Would people please mute their microphones? Thank you. This is something I do with small children in school. Children aged 9, 10, 11, 12. We were doing this in 2012 and 2011 because of the Olympic Games. We had the Olympic Games, so we had to do some things in schools. And I used to do little sessions like this. So I'd ask the kids, what do you think of when I say the word Olympic? And they get all this. Whether they're thinking of the ancient games or the modern games, they get all it. It's a 2-week sport festival. Would you switch your microphones off, please? I'm getting terrible feedback here. A 2-week multi-sport festival held once every 4 years between elite athletes representing their cities or the countries in inter-communal competition. So they get all this. So kids have heard of what Olympic is because, especially in a country that has the Olympic Games, it's in the newspapers, they read about it, see it on the TV. So they know what Olympic means in terms of Olympic Games. Then I ask them, What is Olympiad? Nobody has an idea about this. Well, maybe one or two occasionally know that Olympiad refers not to an Olympic athlete. Some people say, an Olympiad, I know, it's an Olympic athlete. No, it's not. Olympiad, it's a particular Olympic Games. No, it's not. Olympiad is a calendar term. It's a 4-year period, and 3 games were not held, as you know, in the 20th century. So the London Games are properly referred to not as the 30th Games, because there've only been 27, but the games of the 30th Olympiad, the games that took place in the 30th 4-year period, the Olympiad. Okay, so kids don't get that. I don't expect them to. And then I ask them, I also ask this question of undergraduates in sports science and sports studies courses in universities, what is Olympism? And nobody knows. You can go to any sport university in the UK, and most of the undergraduate students do not know what Olympism means. They've never heard of it. But you know what it means, and let's just rehearse it. Remember we said before that it's a 2-week festival once every 4 years between elite athletes in intercommunal competition. That's Olympic, right? Olympism, not the elite athlete just, but everybody. Not just a short fortnight truce period, but the whole of life. Not just competition and winning, but also the values of participation and cooperation. Not just sport as an activity, but also as a formative and developmental influence. So Olympism means something much more than just Olympic, the Olympic Games. Well, we ask ourselves, what does it mean much more than just a particular Olympic Games? And very summarily, let me say, Olympism is a universal social philosophy which emphasizes the role of sport in world development, in international understanding, peaceful coexistence, and especially social and moral education. That's just a brief statement. Oh, by the way, don't bother writing too much of this down. I'm going to send the PowerPoint and probably a couple of academic papers to the organizers, and everything that's on this PowerPoint presentation, you can collect it. Okay, so that's the philosophy of Olympism, if you like. It claims to be a universal social philosophy. And this is exemplified in the Olympic Charter. Look, balanced whole, blending sport with culture and education, joy found in effort, universal fundamental ethical principles. Fundamental principle 6, peaceful, educating youth through sport, practiced without discrimination, mutual understanding, friendship, solidarity, fair play. These values are coming out in the Olympic Charter, right? Now, what about the National Olympic Committees? Well, Chapter 4, actually I'm working from an older version of the Olympic Charter. I haven't bothered to update it. Why don't you check it out for yourself on the internet and see if you can find Olympic values in the Olympic Charter. Okay. This is what it says about the NOCs. The duties of the NOCs. The mission of the NOCs is to send a team of athletes to the... Oh no, it doesn't say that. Because everybody thinks, don't they, that the main job of the NOC is to send athletes to the Olympic Games and to supervise sport development and the winning of medals and stuff like that. That's what people think the National Olympic Committee is for. Not so. According to the Olympic Charter, the first sentence says, the mission of the National Olympic Committee, not one of the missions. No, not one of the mission. The mission of the National Olympic Committee is to develop and protect the Olympic movement. The mission of the NOC is to believe in Olympism and promote Olympism, to propagate the fundamental principles of Olympism at national level, and contribute to the diffusion of Olympism in teaching programs, and see to the creation of institutions that devote themselves to Olympic education. How many national Olympic committees do that? Not many. The amount of resources devoted to protection of the Olympic movement, propagation of fundamental principles of Olympism, and contributing to the diffusion of Olympism in schools and colleges and universities is tiny. Right. I want you to think about that. The priority given to Olympic education within the Olympic movement. It's very big in terms of what people say. It's very small in terms of what people actually do and the amount of resources they're willing to put to it. Now, my big question is, we've got a whole bunch of values there. I've just announced a whole bunch of values. How can we systematize this and bring it all together? Well, I tried to do this in one of my papers 10, 12 years ago. And I tried to gather together what's been said about the values of Olympism into a philosophical anthropology. Philosophical anthropology is an ideal conception of the human being. Every education system needs a philosophical anthropology, okay? What is the ideal person that this educational system is meant to produce? And this is the philosophical anthropology of Olympism. Individual, all-round harmonious development. Do schools do that? I was a school teacher for 3 years, many years ago. It hasn't changed much. Do British secondary schools strive towards individual, all-round harmonious development? No, they don't. 90% of the school curriculum is cognitive. It's to do with learning maths and history and physics and sociology and so on and so on and so on. Most school education is at the desk, or at the computer, learning, propositional knowledge. Where's the art? Where's the drama? Where's the creative stuff? Where's the sport? Where's the music? Some schools have this. Many schools don't. Some schools have it, but not much, and nowhere near as much as they have the cognitive. So the ideal of individual, all-round harmonious development is a tough one, and most schools, I don't think, do it. Towards excellence and achievement, well, of course, you wouldn't want a school that wasn't aiming for excellence and achievement. Through effort, yes, you're not going to do anything unless you make a decent effort. Somebody sends me an essay. It's 2 pages of rubbish, badly written, obviously not taking much time over it. Sometimes when I get those, I send them straight back. I say, I'm going to give this 0. It's an insult to receive this. Put some effort into it. Show me your best and I'll mark it. We expect effort if you're going to get excellence. It's just natural. It's just normal. But Olympism emphasizes sporting activity, competitive sporting. So it's effort in competitive sport. Under what kind of conditions? Respect, fairness, justice, equality. Why? With a view to creating lasting personal human relationships. And the rest of the world? Well, international relationships, peace, toleration, understanding. And also, Coubertin always wanted to ally sport with the arts. Also, cultural alliances with the arts. So that's the kind of thing that you think of as Olympism, right? Now let's just look at these values here. Where's your excellence, friendship, and respect? Excellence is a little word in number 2. Friendship is a little word in number 5. Respect is a little word in number 4. Look what it misses out. Excellence, friendship, respect. Look what it misses out. Peace. It doesn't mention peace. International understanding. Doesn't mention that. Justice. Doesn't mention justice. Equality. These big social and political themes that Olympism stands for in the world. Excellence, friendship, respect. Doesn't get it, does it? And you wouldn't, it's no fluke. Excellence, friendship, and respect turn out to be those values that are touted as the Olympic values, right? Excellence, friendship, respect was invented by the marketing department at the IOC in Lausanne in 1999. They wanted a big push and they wanted a big marketing campaign. And these marketers sitting at the desks and designing logos and stuff, excellence, friendship, respect. First time I saw it was 99 at the first WADA doping conference in Lausanne, where WADA was set up in September 1999. And the first time I saw it, these huge posters, one with excellence and an athlete, one with friendship with two athletes, one with respect, another athlete. And I thought, oh, they're nice. But excellence, friendship, are they Olympic values? No, they're not. Every school in the world wants excellence. Every school in the world wants their kids to be friends. Every school in the world wants their kids to be respectful to each other and to the teachers and the teachers to them. So excellence, friendship, respect, they're just values. They're just ordinary values that everybody has. Every enterprise that deals with human beings has these three things as their values. What does that show? It shows that they're not especially Olympic values, right? They're just values. And that's why, if you have an emphasis on values education and you're only thinking about excellence, friendship, respect, you miss out all that's important about Olympism. So I'm going to try and ask the question, where does all this stuff come from? You know, the friendship, respect, the excellence, the peace, the justice, the toleration, the respect, the fairness, the equality. Where do all these ideas and values and ideals, where do they come from? Change gear. Let's ask a question. We're looking for the values of Olympism. Let's look at what sport is. What is sport? That's the question, what is sport? Now, the way to answer this is through a philosophical technique called conceptual analysis. You analyze the concept of sport and you try to find elements that are logically necessary, right? So some people say, what is sport? And somebody says, oh, sport, she is fun. And I ask, well, I can see that sport could be fun, but I've also played losing 6-0 with 10 minutes to go, and it's raining hard, and it's 2 degrees, and somebody just stamped on my hand on the floor, and you can go on and on, can't you? It's not fun. When people strive for medals in the Olympic Games, what they're doing is not characterizable as fun. They're not hopping around laughing and being happy and tickling themselves, are they? They're engaged in a serious enterprise with all their concentration and might and determination. That's something different from fun. So I want to say that although sport may well be fun, it also may not be fun. And that means that fun is not a logically necessary condition, because fun is not necessary to sport. It sometimes goes with sport, but it's not necessary to sport. Now, so what is sport necessarily? I want to say, firstly, it's human, right? Animals don't do sport. Polar bears play in the snow, and monkeys run about and jump about in the trees, and it looks like they're playing. And they may well play. I don't want to deny that animals sometimes play. But what they don't do is sport. You never see a bunch of monkeys saying, right, line up here, first one to the banana tree wins. You don't see that. So sport is necessarily human. What about horses in the Olympic Games? Is that a counterexample to my argument? No, because the reason why horses are allowed in the Olympic Games is because they're always under the control of the human. The human is a major element in getting the horse to do what it's doing. The human is the one who produces the result. Do you think the horse could remember to hop over those fences in the right order? And to do that within the time, unless encouraged and made to do it by a human. Okay, And that's why you don't have greyhound racing, which is another animal sport, because in greyhound racing, you let the dogs off, they run away. So they're not under the control of the human. So something like greyhound racing could never be an Olympic sport. So sport is human. Secondly, it's physical. All sports are physical. Now, some people say, what about chess? I say, well, chess is not a sport because it's not physical. And some people say, well, look, you move your piece like this. Right? You move your piece like this, don't you? So you're doing something physical. And I say, yeah, but you're doing something physical when you're reading a book. You know, you're sitting on your backside for a start. That's the physical part of your body, your backside. You're sitting on it. You're reading a book. You're turning the pages like this. That's a physical thing. So is reading a book a sport? Of course not. Well, why not? Because moving the piece like this is not necessary to the outcome. In sport, the physical bit of what you're doing is necessary and produces the outcome. Whereas in chess, the kind of movement I make to move my pawn to rook's, to move my bishop to rook's pawn 6, the kind of movement I use is irrelevant to the outcome. Because I could have made that same movement with my other hand. I could have made the movement with my toe. I could have made the movement with my nose. I could have made the movement by asking you to do it for me, and it wouldn't matter. So the nature of the movement is irrelevant to the outcome of the game of chess. So that's the reason why it's not a sport. So sport is human and it's physical. And it's not just physical, jogging's physical, right? But it doesn't have skill. The difference between going for a jog and having a running race is that you can jog any way you like and nobody cares, right? You don't need any particular skill to go and jog, but you do need skills to run. Race running is a particular skill, and only those who have those skills and train themselves in those skills are going to win. So sports is human physical skill. All Olympic sport as well is a contest. It's a competition. You can't think of an Olympic sport that is not a competition. The Olympics is about competitive sport. And in order for there to be a contest, you can't have a contest unless you have a way of knowing who's the winner and who's the loser. And how do you find out who's the winner and who's the loser? The rules tell you who's the winner and who's the loser. So all sports are rule governed. And finally, all sports are institutionalized. If you want to become a sport, an Olympic sport, you have to start off with small federations and national federations and international federations. It has to be institutionalized in order to count as a sport, and there are rules for this. The Olympic Program Committee only allows on the Olympic program sports that are properly institutionalized. Don't worry about the last one. I'm leaving it out for now. I don't have time. Okay, so we're talking about 6 things here. And these are all necessary conditions of sport. Sports are necessarily governed by rules. Sports are necessarily skilled. Sports are necessarily competitive, all right? You can't think of one sport that is not a contest, is not skilled, is not rule governed. That's the point. So this isn't just my definition that I put against your definition, and the two definitions, could be on an equal level. No, this I claim is a conceptual analysis of the concept of sport. And if you don't agree with this, let's have a discussion about it. But it will be a genuine argument. It won't just be my version against your version. There will be genuine arguments and reasons given to support your point of view. So I'm going to take it as read now that the concept of sport goes like this. A sport is an institutionalized, rule-governed contest of human physical skill. It's a simple short sentence definition with 6 terms in it. These 6 terms are logically necessary conditions for the concept of sport. Now, what does the concept give us? It gives us 2 things. Number 1, it gives us a demarcation criterion. It demarcates what is sport from what is not sport. And this is very important because every National Olympic Committee, every sports ministry has to decide which activities get funding. Who gets money from the sports ministry to develop their sport? Well, of course, everybody wants to get money. So everybody's applying to the sports ministry to be a sport. And the sport ministry has to say, no, you're not. No, you're not. Yes, you are. No, you're not. Yes, you are. The sport ministry and the International Olympic Committee has to have a demarcation criterion. You are sport, you're not sport. Okay. In England, contract bridge, a card game, applied to be a sport. Obviously, they want some money. And the British Sports Council said no. Card games aren't sports. Chess has tried many times to do this. At the moment, the answer is no. Actually, the IOC has a special category for chess and Go and other board games, and bridge as well, card games. It calls them mind sports. Now, this is very interesting. If you call something a something sport, it means it's not a sport. So you call something a mind sport, and everybody thinks, oh, they've agreed that chess is a sport. No, they haven't. The fact that they put it in the category of mind sport means that they have denied access to the concept of sport. They say, you're not a sport. You're a mind sport. You can be a mind sport. So they put them all in mind sport box. Because people around the world, they call anything they like, they call it sport, right? For various reasons of their own. They want the concept. Sport is such a good thing. They want to be part of the good thing, okay? So you have lots of things that are not sport that use the word sport, like nature sports. Nature sports are like outdoor activities and outdoor pursuits. They are not sports. Read Kevin Crine on this. Kevin Crine has a great book, Why Nature Sports Are Not Sports. He doesn't want to call them nature sports, you see. I noticed that yoga, which is definitely not a sport, not intended to be a sport. Now you have people who want to develop something called yoga sport. There's a yoga sport federation now in India. So what do these guys have to do in order to make yoga, which is not a sport, into a sport and call it yoga sport? What do you have to do? They have to make it human physical skill contest rule governed institutionalized. They have to make sure that yoga becomes an institutionalized rule governed contest. You know that yoga doesn't involve a contest, right? Yoga is not about contesting against other human beings. It's about self-development and self-improvement, right? And on that ground, it's not a sport. So what these guys had to do was they had to invent stuff that made yoga into some kind of contest so that they could claim that yoga was a sport. That just reinforces my thesis that if you want to be a sport, you've got to be these 6 things. And here's the demarcation criterion. If it's human, not animals. If it's physical, not chess. If it's skill, not jogging. If it's contest, not mountaineering. Mountaineering is not a contest. If I move, watch me move on the mountain. I'm moving on the mountain, right? What's the mountain going to do? Basically, a mountain just sits there. I mean, you might get bad weather conditions, you know, the snow and things like that. But there's no contest between you and some other agency that's trying to do something. Mountaineering is a challenge. Can I get to the top? It's a kind of test. Can I get there? But it's not a contest, because a contest is with others. It's got to be rule governed. So not field sports. Field sports is just get out there and kill something. Field sports where you just bang, 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 bang. No rules, do it anyhow you like. Of course, you can make a field sport into a sport. For example, fishing. I don't know how to fish. I never did it. But if I went to my local park and threw a hook into the river and tried to get some fish, I can do it any way I want. Doesn't matter. I'm just fishing, right? But if you want a sport, then you have to have rules. Like angling. Angling is fishing sport. So they give you a certain number of meters of the riverbank. You have to weigh your catch. You can only use this kind of hook, not this kind of hook. There are rules and regulations that govern angling. There aren't rules and regulations that govern field sports. And institutionalization. Hula hooping was never institutionalized. I suppose it could have become a sport, but it never did. Incidentally, one of the reasons why esports will never become a proper sport is because they can't be institutionalized, because the code and the product is owned by an individual. It can't be properly institutionalized. Like, nobody owns cricket. There might be bodies like the ICC that runs cricket, right? That they don't own cricket. Nobody owns cricket. Nobody owns football. Yeah? But somebody owns Game of Thrones and gets profit directly from it and organizes events just for Games of Thrones for himself and his company, right? That's not institutionalization. Okay, so the concept of sport gives you a demarcation criterion. These 6 criteria tell you what sport is not, as well as telling you what sport is. Now here comes the tricky move. Tricky move is this. From these logically necessary conditions, there flow a range of values. If sports are necessarily human, it suggests that you've got a concern for the development of the human. If sports are necessarily physical, you're going to rely on effort for your results, in part. If it's skilled, you have to be committed to the development of human capacities. You want to get better at it, more skilled. So the idea of practice and training and education comes into the idea of skill. We value practice and coaching and education in sport because it's skilled, because it's a contest. There has to be a contract contest. That's to say, when I walk over the white line onto the football pitch, I enter a different world. It's like I'm in a magic circle. Different rules apply. What I can barge people. I can tackle people. You try going in the bus queue on the way home today. Go in the bus queue and try and barge somebody in the bus queue. They won't like it because you're not supposed to barge people in the street. But on the football field, you can barge people as long as you do it legitimately. So there's this contract which says, yes, it's all right for you to come and barge me if it's all right for me to come and barge you. We make a contract that in this particular game, there are certain rules and I'll accept the rules, you accept the rules. I promise to honor the rules, so do you. Let's play. So this contract lies at the basis of sport, a contract of trust. It's the same as the kind of contract that lies at the basis of all society. All societies are based, in the last analysis, on trust of the other person, on the shake hands, on the contract. And the contest, of course, directs us towards the values of competition and excellence, but also the value of cooperation, because competition is not conflict. Sporting competition is impossible without deep levels of cooperation, right? You have to cooperate in order to produce the game. I can't even take part in a contest, in a competition, unless I've agreed to enterprise altogether. And one of the things that cooperation does is it produces rules. And if the activity is rule governed, as soon as you have a set of rules, you have fairness, equality, and justice. Think of things that happen in sport. and think of how people talk about them. You know, think about mancadding in cricket, or think about people spot fixing, bowling a wide or a no ball, a certain ball in the over, and manipulating the betting, and so on and so on. People talk in terms of fairness and equality between the teams. If you can do that, I can do it. If I agree I'm not going to do that, neither should you. Incidentally, this is what's wrong with doping. People will tell you what's wrong with doping is that it makes you unhealthy, and that it's bad as a role model for the kids and so on. So no, the main reason why doping is wrong is because you said you wouldn't. You had a contract to contest. The Olympic oath says, I promise that I have prepared myself ethically for the upcoming tournament. It says I have not doped. So any dope head has to tell a lie at the Olympic Games in order to compete. Has to tell a lie. Has to be false. So if you're found out, justice will hit you, mate. Don't worry. And that's formal and informal justice. The formal justice, they'll ban you for some years. And informal justice is, we know who you are. We know you're a cheat. We know you're a liar. We know that you entered into the competition on unfair, unequal terms. And that is not just to do a bad thing, is to undermine the basis, the very basis of sport. Why? Because you're undermining the logically necessary conditions of sport, right? And institutionalized, that brings lawful authority to implement the rules. So you get referees and judges and all that kind of stuff. Right, okay, so we have the concept of sport, which sets out our logically necessary conditions. The concept gives us a demarcation criterion to tell us what is and what is not sport. And the logically necessary conditions, from them fall out a set of values. Now, I ask you to look at those values. Development of the human, effort, contract, competition, excellence, fair play, equality, justice, law, respect, etc., etc. These, I want to claim, are the real values of Olympism. That's where Olympism comes from. Some people say that Olympism was invented by this genius, de Coubertin, who, out of his own head, spun this wonderful idea of Olympism, and that's where it comes from. And we'll have to believe in de Coubertin. No, it's not like that at all. De Coubertin was a social observer. He was an early sociologist. And all de Coubertin did, which was a wonderful thing, was to notice what was already there. It's very difficult to do that. These days, you know, we're getting riots in the United States based on the problems with the police and racism. Okay. Now, is that what's happening? Does that justify people just raiding stores and just taking everything out of an electrical store? You know, freezers and dishwashers and so all being stolen, nothing left in the store. Is that really about police brutality, or is it just people engaging in criminal activity? Well, look, it's very difficult to know because it's here now, and you see a bit of news and a bit of this and a bit of that. And it's very difficult to get an overview and to see what the hell is actually going on, to see what kind of explanations we can give that are good explanations. Right, this is what de Coubertin did. He saw what was already there. He saw the birth of sport. He saw sport emerging as, he thought, going to be a major force in popular culture. And from the start, he saw the values that are already necessarily in sport. if you want to have sport, you have to have certain values. Those values are the basis of sport. So some people think Olympism gives values to sport. It's the other way around. Sport is where Olympism gets its values from. That was the genius of de Coubertin. So sport has become so important in everyday life just because sport encapsulates and represents those everyday values that are present in any approach to civilized and well-organized communities anywhere in the world. And that's why sport is universalizable. Art is not universalizable. Art is culturally specific. Indian art is completely different from African art and from European art. So in order to understand an art form, you really have to understand the community within which it was born and it continues to exist. Well, universal values are not like that. They're values that anybody anywhere can recognize because they're human values, right? And sport, not art, is universalizable. And that's what gives it its power. So I say, don't look to the heavens for inspiration. Don't look to ideology for guidance. Just look at sport. Try to understand the logical basis of sport. Then you'll see where the ideology comes from. What gives the ideology its sense and its meaning? And then you'll see what sport's values are and what they must be. Everyday sport in everyday life is full of value, and it's the source of Olympism. And I want to say also, it's the basis of Olympic education. Sport, sport, sport. Thank you very much.
Dr. Parry has concluded his presentation. We have time for a couple of questions. Dr. Ragbir Singh, do you have anything in mind? Maybe, I believe Mrs. Arora may have a question.
Thank you, Jim Parry. It was a wonderful and informative presentation. As the Olympics were started not only to promote sports, but to spread humanity, love, brotherhood in the people of the different countries. But now just I wanted to ask that, do you really think that real spirit of Olympism is followed during Olympic Games?
International Olympic Committee would be the place on earth where Olympic values were respected and observed, wouldn't you? You would expect that, wouldn't you? Yeah. Do you find that? Do you really find that? I don't find that at all. I think many of the decisions that are taken or decisions based on sports politics and not decisions based on rationality and Olympic principles. And I'm continuously disappointed by that. So you ask, are the Olympic principles observed at the Olympic Games? I think probably they are observed more at the Olympic Games than they are anywhere else in athletic competition. So if you go to any World Championships, I think you'll find that the Olympic Games, people are more respectful of Olympic values than in other places. And the IOC makes a big thing of having no advertising around the track. You know, for many years, it was one of the few sporting venues where there was no commercialism involved and so on and so on. And I think that the IOC does try, or parts of the IOC, they do try to justify their decisions on the basis of Olympic values. But I'd like to see a lot more of that.
So that's all we had time for in terms of Q&A. Dr. Ragbir Singh Man, would you like to perhaps conclude? And Dr. Parry, I'll come to you as well in case you have any concluding remarks. Dr. Man?
Jim Parry, thank you very much for your side of view as regards the Olympism and the values, etc. We talk about the values inherent in the sports, which is nobody is able to see. But you have tried to show them that in sports, these values are inherent there. So thank you for that. I had one question for you from my side. that is idealism as well as realism. The same problem is there. The idea is in your mind and realism is in front of you. That is what you talked in your speech today. So
yes, that's right. I mean, that's absolutely correct. And you were right in your first point, that what I'm trying to do here is to exhibit the internal values of sport. And this is a very important job, because it's not me telling you what the values of sport are. It's me trying to understand sport, same as you. You have the same job as me, right? You're trying to understand sport. I'm trying to understand sport. And so my answers are not my answers. They're the answers that come from sport. And I could be wrong, and then you show me I'm wrong. That's okay. Because if you show me I'm wrong, give me a better account, then my account's better. So this is meant to be a theoretical, objectivist account. It's not meant to be my opinion. Okay. So, and because I do think that sport does have internal values. Now the question is, what are they? And as you say, my job, my first job, was to just explain what I think they are. The second one, realism and idealism, well, this is the perennial problem, isn't it? Realism, you have to deal with what's there in front of your nose. But how do you do that? How do you deal with reality? And part of my answer is, you're not equipped to deal with reality unless you have some values, some ideas, some ideals that you're working towards. That's what enables you to deal with the present day. So ideals aren't just airy-fairy pie in the sky in the future things. They're things that you're working towards all the time. And my final word, if you don't mind, Rubav, is to say thank you very much for inviting me. I've really enjoyed this session, and I wish I were there with you, and I wish I had more time to develop these ideas and to hear your ideas, to try to improve my own. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Parry. The pleasure was certainly ours, and I'm pretty sure in the future we can probably have a subsequent conversation. And on behalf of everyone watching, on behalf of Dr. Raghbir Singh Maan, Miss Sunita Arora, me, we wish you a very, very speedy recovery as well.
Thanks very much.